shrubs, which are technically perennials because they do come back every year. We want to start out with planting your garden. So when you go to start designing and figuring out where you want to put things, you kind of need to take stock on what you have, what kind of location you have, whether it's a sunny area. Does it get all day sun? Does it get just a few hours of sun? Is it a windy area? All of these things are going to be a factor in planting your garden, because there are plants that do better in the shade. There are plants that are going to withstand our hot, dry conditions. Do you have animals? Do you have deer, rabbits, javelina, all that fun stuff? Because that's going to make a big difference, because you can't just plop a plant out and hope that they're not going to eat it. So there are different strategies on planting. Do you want butterflies and hummingbirds? That can factor in there as well, because not all plants will have bees, but there are certain plants that hummingbirds are attracted to. There are certain plants that butterflies are attracted to. So those are all different things you kind of want to consider when you are planting your garden. The other is making sure that you have an area. If anybody's tried to dig a hole in our soil, it doesn't matter whether you're in Prescott Valley, if you're on Thumb Butte, if you're out in Williamson Valley, it's bad all over town. So you just have different bad here and there. So it just kind of depends on we all have to amend. So that is one of the most important things. Is so when you are going to plant, amend that soil with some premium mulch. It's our Waters product. It just gives you some organic matter that you're going to put into that soil. It'll help break up the clay if you have clay. If you have very porous, rocky, sandy soil, it'll help give you some moisture holding power for those areas. Actually, clay soil, most soils have somewhat clay or some clay in it. And clay can be a good thing because it does hold that moisture longer, but you have to be cautious with that. If you are in clay, have more clay in your area, you want to be careful because you can easily overwater your plants, because that moisture just keeps gathering, and the clay is very dense. So you can just strangle your plants, basically suffocate them. It's kind of like holding body underwater. And plants need oxygen in order for it to thrive. So it sounds weird about being underground, but they do need to have a little bit of that to thrive and grow. There are different types of perennials. So a perennial is anything that will come back year after year. So you will see them yearly, kind of where the perennial comes from. Annuals are something like all the color that you're seeing all around you. It's something you're planting annually. So I remember annually, perennials are permanent. So that's kind of an easy way to do that. Shrubs, like this beautiful gardenia here, are also perennials, but they're woody perennials. So we consider them shrubs. This is a beautiful gardenia. This is actually an evergreen here, and it does need some shade in this location. One of the things, how many are you new to this area? A lot of you new to this area? Great. You guys are here. So we are a mile high. So we have very high altitude. We're also a high desert category. So we have the heat. The humidity that we've had this year is very, very unusual. Usually May and June are very, very dry. And when I say high humidity, when I'm saying 20%, that's high for this area, okay? So we're not used to it. And plants are actually doing better this year than a lot of years because we have that. Usually May and June, the wind is constant and usually at 15 to 20. And it's just so hot and dry, and plants just dry out like nobody's business. A lot of people are showing me leaves that have browning edges, and that's a little bit of transport. The air is just kind of sucking the moisture right out of the leaves. So when you are watering this time of year, you want to be really, really careful because it's easy to overwater because we want to care for our plants. We're way down deep inside, we're nurturers. And we see a plant kind of doing this and it's like, oh, we need water. Shh. But maybe it's wet underneath there. And how do you feel in the afternoon? You kind of feel wilted too, don't you? So the plants will do the same thing. If they recover when the sun kind of goes down and they kind of say, oh, okay, now it's nice. Don't worry about watering. Always check. It's very, very important to check if you need to water. Because like I said, this is one of those times where we just assume they need extra water and plants will die just because they get that extra water. And some of the same signals are there for not enough water and too much, or not enough water and too much water. They can start wilting. They can get black on the outsides. Are signs of too much water. So always pop a screwdriver, a piece of rebar in your bowl, or get a water meter or a moisture meter. Be careful, those tips that are on there are very delicate, so be careful that you don't break those off when you go into the dirt. They're kind of meant for pots instead. Let's go into some shady stuff. We'll start with the shade and then kind of work our way into the sun. And Reader's gonna get me the heaviest stuff. Okay, so this is a beautiful hosta. So hostas love the shade. So when I say shade, I'm talking they can take a couple of hours of morning sun. They can't take our hot afternoon intense heat. So you've got to be cautious with these. This is a plant that rabbits and deer do like to munch. Snails as well. It's one of those critter that like to eat on the leaves of hostas. But they're really pretty. It's all mostly about the leaf color. They do bloom, and this one's getting ready to. They're very fragrant when they bloom. They like moisture, so it's one of those ones that you will have to water a little bit more often than you would other things. And this is a Japanese sedge. Not technically a perennial, but it does come back year after year. It's just a really pretty highlight in a shadier area. It gives you some brightness in the shade, and it can handle our shadier spots. So if you needed a plant just to give you a pop of color, this would be a great one for you. They will finish up about yay big. And fill. Usually you want to plant them in a circle of 3. Or triangle of 3, I guess. We saw the gardenia. This is a woody shrub. It is evergreen. Smells wonderful. If you can't smell it, come up and take a whiff. It does stay green here, so you do want to plant it in the shade. And it does bloom most of the summer. Gardenias and some of the other shadier plants do like that lower acidity, so you want to add some soil sulfur to the soil when you plant these. Or if you put them in a pot, once a year, you'll put some soil sulfur in there just to keep it more neutral. Spireas are also a woody shrub. They are a shadier, one of our shady shrubs. And if you ever walk through our nursery, we try to set it up so it's easier to navigate. If you read tags, beware, they make tags for the entire country, and a lot of things will say full sun. And in Prescott, Arizona, you do not want to plant this in full sun. So if you have questions or concerns, please ask or find one of us. We will be happy to help you get the right plant for the right location. It's kind of what we do. So spireas are great. They come in a variety of different sizes and colors. They do like that morning sun, afternoon shade. Most of them will get in that 2 to 5 foot size range. Colors go from whites to pinks to purples, so you can kind of get one for whatever your color scheme is. All right. This is another shrub. It's a hydrangea. It's another one that loves the morning sun. Little bit of extra water on these guys. So when I say water, it's something that you're going to probably do twice a week for your smaller stuff. In the shade, it might not be quite that much. It just kind of depends on our temperatures outside. It's really easy for me to stand up here and tell you you're going to water once or twice a week. But the temperatures, there's so many different variables. It depends on how your soil drains, what type of soil structure you have. You might have holes here and one over there, and it could be so different between the two, and you're kind of scratching your head. That one died, this one didn't. So we have some troubleshooting techniques that we can try to help you through some of that stuff. Sometimes the plant just comes out weak and it just can't survive the harsh conditions that we put it in. Others, maybe that hole has better drainage and that's why that plant's doing better. This one is suffering because there's no drainage at all. So a lot of different variables. One of the things I always tell people is really kind of pay attention to plants. If you start seeing they're suffering, we can try to head it off at the pass. So we will ask you questions to try to identify what's going on with the plant. Are the leaves drying on the edges? Are they yellowing inside? These are indications. Inside is usually an indication of overwatering if they start turning yellow inside. Usually drying at the tips is not enough water. So, and this is not science, but it helps us get us where we need to be. So if in doubt, give us a call. We'll help you through it, or bring a picture or samples in. We'll take a look at it and try to figure out what's going on. This year, another thing that's happening with us is we have a lot of bugs and fungal issues because of our higher humidity and the heat. So bring baggies. We always see little baggies coming through. It's like, okay, we have a diagnosis. And we have a great microscope down in the lower house that we can put stuff under, and you can see the littlest bugs. It's kind of cool. So let us help you be successful. Okay. There are other perennial shade-loving plants. Heucheras are all about the leaf color. They come in purples and orange, yellows, greens. Great plant, loves the shade. Vinca, most people are familiar with the Vinca periwinkle. That's a great ground cover, little purple flowers. That one's a great one for, planting under trees and just kind of giving you some color under there. So if you are down in the lower house right next to the cash registers, it's kind of our shady perennial area. Outside underneath the black shade cloth, most of our shrubs are out there. There's a few perennials also mixed in there, but it's all shade stuff. The inside of the lower house are all the perennials. So anything that's in that center section can handle the full sun. Okay. This is actually a lavender, so it's an herb. This one's called Platinum Blonde. It's really cool because it is variegated. It's one of the only variegated lavenders out there. And it's gorgeous. Really pretty purple flowers, just like a regular lavender. Great plant. It will come back year after year for you. Probably gets in that 3-foot size range. And it smells wonderful.
Does that take sun or shade?
It does. We have moved into the sunny stuff because most of us have sunniness. So we have all of this. This is a rosemary, and this one's kind of cool because they have trained it upright. So it's kind of a little rosemary tree. So this would be great in a pot. The only thing I would kind of caution you with, if you're going to put it in a pot, be careful you don't overwater it. Rosemary is very, very drought tolerant. Once or twice a week probably would be enough for it. So be careful. Rosemaries have bloom twice a year. Really pretty blue flowers, and the bees love them when they do bloom.
What color flowers?
Blue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then typically I have the Tuscan blue, which is an upright rosemary. Get about 4 by 4. There's also Huntington carpet rosemary that will stretch out. It's more of a ground cover, and it'll fill a good 6-foot section. Great erosion control. If you have a wall that you want it to kind of creep over, it's a fabulous one to do. Okay. Cone flowers. Cone flowers are one of my favorite flowers. They are so unique, and to me they're special. The birds, the little goldfinches, if you are a bird watcher, goldfinches love these guys. Butterflies do as well because they do have this nice little landing pad. Cone flowers come in a variety of different colors and sizes. So kind of when you're thinking about your garden, kind of look at the tag and see kind of how tall it's going to get. Most of your cone flowers are going to be in that 12 to 18 inches. They bloom all summer long. You just have to keep deadheading them. So once they are spent, just go down to the first leaf and cut them off. And that'll leave room for the next bloom to come in. Deadheading is really important for us because if you don't deadhead, yeah, you'll get a lot of seeds, but it kind of perks the plant into, it's fall, I need to go to sleep. So if you keep deadheading it, it just keeps re-energizing it, so it'll keep blooming for you all year round. This guy here is a shrub as well. This one is a mandarin tango potentilla. This potentilla is a woody shrub. It is deciduous, so it'll go dormant in the wintertime, so it'll go back to sticks. But it's just such an unusual color. It's fabulous. Potentillas, barberries, and pampas grass are one of the ones that I will tell you when you first plant them, you are going to water them daily. I don't say that very often, but these are one of those plants I want you to water daily because they dry. The roots can't take enough water in when they're first planted. Once they're established, once or twice a week watering is all you're going to need to do. And when I say watering, you want to water deeply. So when you're watering or doing your drip system, let it run for a good long time. If you're only running it 10, 15 minutes, you're wasting water because it's only going down about that much. If you check it in an hour, that much is going to be dry by the midday. So when you're watering, you want to water deeply, less often than every day for a few minutes. So make sure you change your drip system so you're watering once or twice a week, unless you plant new stuff. And if it's the perennials, which are in such a small container, they need a little bit of extra help. So maybe 3 times a week instead of the twice a week, just to get them through that hot heat that we have going on right now.
How tall does that get?
This one will get about 4 by 4. And they come in a variety of colors as well. The most popular one is just the Goldfinger, which is a yellow one, but they do come in whites and pinks as well. This is the Gaillardia. We've been talking a lot about Gaillardias, and they come in a variety of different colors as well. This is the red shades, or spin top red. Most of the other ones are going to be yellow with the red center, and that's more typical of your blanket flower native that we have growing in the mountains in this area. Great little perennial. It'll get about yay big and about this tall. Again, you want to keep it deadheaded, so just come back down to the bottom of this leaf structure and pop it off. Clippers, you can do small pair of clippers as well to do that. I do my fingers because I can feel better. I can get where I need to be. This is the snow fountain Gara. It's also called whirling butterflies, and there's a really good reason for that. If you guys kind of take a look at this, what do you see right there? You see a butterfly? That's why they're called whirling butterflies. So it's a great plant, especially when in the wind. The white ones are spectacular. This is about yay tall, and you'll get a pretty good sized plant of it. They do come in pinks, but I just really like the white one. This is a Texas skullcap. It's very similar to our autumn sage. It has those kind of tubular flowers that the hummingbirds love. This is a small little brown, I wouldn't say ground cover because it doesn't get that big, but it's just a nice little moundy plant. They come in pinks and purples as well. Very drought tolerant. So once they're established, once or twice a week should be fine. Again, a lot of your smaller stuff, I do water twice a week. Your shrubs, once they're in the ground for a year, once a week, really deep watering should be enough, unless we're at 105. Then you might want to add an extra water a day. Okay. Milkweed. Milkweed is one of our very popular plants around here because of the monarchs. I brought 3 different varieties up just to show you how different they can be. This is a pink one. This is a showy pink, and it does get tall, so you definitely don't want to put this in front of the garden. You want to put it in the back area. Nice little pink flowers that the monarchs love. There is also an annual milkweed, which is a tropical milkweed that they really love. The sad thing is that the annual milkweed obviously will not come back. But if you do get monarchs to hatch in your yard, they will devour that tropical milkweed because it's their favorite. And it's more food than actual nectar on it. This is a cute little thing that Monrovia put through, and it just has 3 little tuberosa, which is their perennial milkweed, but it does have the nice pretty orange flowers. And then this one here is a narrow leaf milkweed. This one's new for me this year. I've never seen the such narrow leaves on a milkweed, but it's really pretty. And it also has the pink flowers like the big bag. Since I just looked down and saw this, I'm going to pass this out. We have some information that if you sign up for the email, we will send it out to you. So we just need your name and your email address. Please write legibly if you want to get this, because if it doesn't go through, we can't figure it out. So I'm going to just hand this to you, and you guys can pass it out.
Also, if you're already on the list, you still need to give us your name because it only goes to the people that attended this class.
Okay. Did you guys all hear that? So even though you're already on our email list, if you want to receive information on this class, you need to sign up. So again, we're kind of going off page a little bit just because it's not pretty and I'm dripping on the electronics. This is a pampas grass. It's one of the newer varieties of pampas grass. And the really cool thing about this one, it is variegated. And it only gets about 4 or 5 feet, which are ivory feathers, which is the ones that are, if you have seen the parking lot in the fall, those are ivory feathers. They actually get taller than I am, and then the flowers go even taller. So this one's more manageable in size, and it has this great variegated foliage. There is another pampas grass that'll actually get 10 to 12 feet tall. So if you have a lot of area, you could throw one of those in the back corner. So these two are some of my more drought-tolerant, sunny-loving perennials. I guess technically the Russian sage is a shrub, but it's just gorgeous. And they can get weedy. It's one of those things that if you have them, you have lots of them. So put them in the back corner somewhere. I would never plant this next to my seating area. The bees do love this, so if you have any allergies, it's probably not a great spot for them. But they bloom all summer long. Great, fabulous lavender color, and they're eye-popping. If you drive by some of the, especially in Prescott Valley, we have a lot of them in the medians, and they're just beautiful. Once a week watering is all you need. Once they get established, obviously in the seed, maybe twice a week to get them established is what you're going to need to do. This is the crazy blue. The kind of neat thing about him is he's kind of miniature, so he's only going to get 2 to 3 feet instead of the 4 to 6 that the regular Russian sage will get. Beautiful color. His flowers are just a little bit bigger than the regular Russian sage, but it's a really pretty plant. They are kind of weedy, I think I said that, but they will send out suckers here and there. So think about it before you plant. This is one of my favorite. It's called a rainbow ascot, euphorbia. This is actually an evergreen perennial. So it keeps this beautiful leafy color all year round. It actually kind of turns more purple in the wintertime. Animal resistant is one of the things that is really great about this. It has that milky white sap that the euphorbias always have. Beautiful chartreuse yellow flowers really make this one special. Its cousin is the gopher plant, which I've only had once this year. It's kind of a almost prehistoric looking plant. It has really sharp edges, really pretty. The flowers are very the same, but a really good animal proof plant if you're looking for something like that. And very drought tolerant as well. Pincushions. This is also known as a scabiosa. Pincushions are a great butterfly attractor. If you go down into the lower house, especially further closer to fall, the butterflies are all over this. They're a small little moundy plant that gets about yay big. They do need to be deadheaded, and when they look like this and you see this little fuzz on top of it, that means they're done blooming, and that's what their seed is. So you just go down and clip this off. This is the new bud, and you can see where it's going to be beautiful like this. They call it pincushion because it kind of looks like an old-fashioned pincushion. They come in a kind of the lavender shades. There's a pink one that's kind of a lighter lavender-ish pink. It's not pink by my terms of pink, but they call it pink. And then there's a darker purple one. So there's a couple of different colors of them that are out there. Just to give you some pops of green out there. When fall comes, you can either leave it like this and continue to enjoy the seed heads, or you can cut it down. Typically, I wait and cut grasses back in the spring. Usually around March, I'll just give them a quick haircut. Having all of this extra stuff up there, it can get a little ugly, but it actually helps protect the crown from our cold temperatures that we have in January. Yarrow is another great perennial. It is on the resistant list. However, I've had rabbits eat this. I think the moonshine yarrow is one that they really stay away from. The vintage yarrow and the desert eve yarrow has more lacy foliage, and I think they like that. So be cautious when you're planting, because like I said, we have lists that are for deer and rabbit resistant, but sometimes those guys don't read our list and they don't know they're not supposed to eat it. We also have very gourmet animals, because even stuff that are on that list, they will eat. I had a catmint this winter, never had anything touch it at all for the 4 years that it's been in the ground. This fall, they mowed it down. It's like, I guess they were desperate. So when we lose some of our moisture and there's nothing for them to eat, you say, okay, they did a really good job hedging. Okay. Bee balm. This is also known as Bernarda. This is a fabulous butterfly plant. Beautiful pink flowers. Also comes in purples. Gets about yay tall. Little bit of afternoon sun relief. This one would be very happy. They tend to get brown on the edges. And you can see that this one's kind of starting to, because it was sitting out in the heat the other day. So be patient with your plants during this time of year. They will come out of it. Trim them up, give them a little nurturing, and they'll be just fine. Daylilies are also a fabulous plant. They are very animal resistant. Never had a problem with anything eating these. But again, I would say I wouldn't go out and plant 100 of them if you're in the middle of a deer area, because they probably will nibble. Great neutralizer, and again, planted in threes, they make a fabulous display. Daylilies come in a variety of different colors, and some of the new varieties that are out there are reblooming. A long time ago, daylilies would come out and be beautiful, and then they would go away, and then all you had was the foliage. But now, if you keep deadheading them, they will continue to bloom all summer long. This one's called Endless Coral Daylily, and this is a rebloomer. Stella d'Oro is another one that it's a smaller one, so he only gets like a foot by a foot, bright yellow, and he is also a continuous bloomer. He was the original continuous bloomer. Dianthus is a great perennial as well. The fabulous thing about these is that they are evergreen. They do not die back in the wintertime. They smell like cloves, which is wonderful. And come in a variety of different colors and sizes of flowers. The carnations are part of the dianthus family. So it just kind of depends on what kind of flowers you want. They are a moundy flower. I have several of these in pots, and they're fabulous in the wintertime because I have that blue-green foliage out there all winter long. Perfect, thank you. I'm deadheading as I'm doing this. Do you see that? Okay. These two are one of my favorite, or two of my favorite kind of woody perennial and shrub. This one's called Pugster. This is the Pugster Blue. And the great thing about Pugster is that he's only going to get 2 to 3 feet, and he is a butterfly bush, where most butterfly bushes are 6, 8 foot. Miss Molly and Miss Violet are in that 5-foot-ish size range. The Buzz series tend to stay in that 4 foot, and then the Pugsters are in that 2 to 3 foot. So you can get a butterfly bush to fit whatever size yard you have. Gorgeous flowers, obviously being named butterfly bush. The butterflies love them. Just deadhead, just like you would anything else when they start getting spent like this, and take it back to the next leaf. Because that's where your flowers will come from. Oops. If you don't cut everything else off. So I take it down to the next leaf, and then your new flowers will come out there. In the spring, these guys just need a little trimming to cut them back. If you don't cut back your butterfly bushes, they tend to get really woody in the middle. So I usually whack them back to maybe 36 inches. Depends on your bush. You know, if you have a small one, obviously you're going to go a little bit lower. But it just gets some of that woodiness out of there. If you leave them, they'll be fine. They just get kind of ugly in the center. And this is very, very resistant. So if you were in the middle of the forest and you have deer, javelina, rabbits, they leave these alone. Autumn sage is another one of my favorites. Very drought tolerant. They can handle our heat. Hummingbirds love this guy. As soon as we get these off the truck, the hummingbirds just kind of gravitate down to the lower house, and they just have a heyday. The great thing about the autumn sages is they do come in a variety of different colors. Most of them are going to get in that 3-foot size range by 3. They do go dormant in the wintertime, so they'll usually need to be pruned off, usually in March. Again, I don't prune in the fall. I wait until spring. If you need to do a little cleanup, okay, you know, take the spent blossoms off, but leave all that protection in there so they don't die back too far to the ground. Okay, this guy is an Artemisia, and he is fabulous. He is in the perennial category, but I would almost call him more shrubby. He is evergreen, and he will keep this beautiful silvery color all winter long. He gets in that 2 to 3 foot size range. So for a pop of color next to some flowers, he's really, really pretty. This is a garden phlox, and there are several different types of phloxes out there. The garden phlox are your taller phlox. There is creeping phlox that kind of stays low to the ground and is more of a ground cover. We usually find those in the springtime. And the flowers are a little bit different. Because on the garden phlox, it's more like a ball, whereas in the creeping phlox, it's more individual, and it's more like a carpet of color. Creeping phlox blooms in the spring, whereas the garden phlox is more summer, fall time frame. And this is a succulent, and there are a lot of different succulents out there that are also perennial. The perennial succulents, depending on the variety, either stay green in the winter or they do die back to the ground. Your blue spruce sedum, your Angelina sedum all stay green or blue or yellow throughout the winter. Any of your rosette, like the cherry dazzler, the coral carpet, dragon's blood, all of those will actually die back in the wintertime. But next summer they come out and then you'll have a beautiful plant again. This is called Autumn Joy. It's one of the taller succulents out there, and the butterflies and bees love this guy. He's got a nice little flat flower when he finishes up. Beautiful flower. However, if you have deer, rabbits, javelina, this is not the plant for you. These are all full of moisture, and they will just devour this. So it's on the buffet menu, so be careful with this guy. Birds also, in the wintertime, I have birds pick mine. But it's like, okay, have a few pieces. Just leave it alone once it gets small, okay? All right. So that's kind of the completion of the show and tell. I do want to talk to you about fertilizing. because of the way our soil is, we need to feed. We have almost a dead soil here. Our pH level is very, very high. So if you fertilize with the 744, this is something Ken has put together. He formulated it special for this area. So it's cottonseed meal. There's also sulfur in it that helps lower that pH level. And food is really, really important to our plants. So we feed 3 times a year for our deciduous trees, perennials, shrubs, that type of thing. Evergreens get a 4th dose, and we tell you to remember your holidays. So Easter, 4th of July, Halloween, and New Year's. We just try to keep it simple. If you're a math person, go quarterly. Either way, as long as you get it down, it's a great thing. Like I said, the sulfur is important because it helps keep that pH level. All of the soil tests that come into the store come back high pH. It's in our water. We have very high alkalinity in our soil and our water. So every time you're watering, you're adding more alkalinity to the soil. So add extra sulfur to your soil and the plants will be happier. Another thing that I like to put down, there it is, in my perennial gardens, and I usually do this early spring. This is humic acid. It's a soil conditioner. So when you open this up, then definitely wear gloves when you apply this, because it's just little black pellets. And basically what this is they have taken a compost bin, and the powder that's on the very, very bottom, they have pelletized it. And all of that goodness goes back into the soil, and it just attracts earthworms and all that mycorrhizae and the good fungi that are good for plants and helps create a better environment for your root system. This stuff is great, and I never believed in it before, but I applied it. I live in Dewey, and I live way up on top of a hill, and it's just caliche and rock. All the new plants that I planted never saw earthworm until I started using this. And I have worms now. So it's a fabulous product. Put it on once a year in the springtime, and you'll see an improvement in your gardens. When it comes to fall, a lot of plants like to be divided when they get too big. So like daylilies, peonies, all of those things irises, all of those things can do better if they're divided every 3 or 5, between 3 and 5 years. When the plant gets too big, sometimes it can't sustain itself. So going in, dividing it, and separating it and replanting it will help re-energize it. When you go to plant in the fall or replant in the fall, put some superphosphate down. You can see the 18 in your in the NPK. So if anybody's not familiar with these 3 numbers, all fertilizers have these 3 numbers. The first number is your nitrogen number. That is for your foliage growth. So if your foliage is yellow, or has like your autumn blaze maples tend to get chlorotic, and so you'll see the green veins in the yellow foliage. They need iron, and that nitrogen will help that iron kick in. The middle number is for your root systems and your flowers. So when you're planting peonies in the fall or in the spring, make sure you put superphosphate on. That'll help bring out the flowers in that early springtime. This last number is the potash, which is kind of all around plant health. So when you think of these numbers, think of up, down, and all around to kind of help you figure out what they actually mean. But when you go to divide a plant, obviously this one's really young and you wouldn't want to do that, but just dig up the clump and then just separate it, either with a sharp knife, especially a peony. Peony's very, very woody underneath. And so just take a sharp knife and cut it in half. Make sure your area is kind of where you're going to put it is already prepared. Sprinkle your superphosphate, or you can use bone meal as well. It's also a good root and bloomer food. And then recover them. It's really important when you're planting is to make sure that you're getting them back into the right plant depth. Because if you replant or plant a plant too deep, it's not going to, it won't thrive. It won't bloom, especially with your peonies. If you get it too low, your peony, it's like the one that won't come out. Let's try this one. There we go. Come on. So when you plant, you want this part to be even with the soil that you're putting it in. So the hole only needs to be 6 inches deep, and you want everything even. If you're planting bigger trees, I usually take a yardstick out there just so I know that I have it even with the soil. If you're going to err, you actually want it high. You never want to go lower than where you're at in the thing. Because if we ever get our monsoon, your water is going to drain and you'll get root rot in there. So be really careful with that. Irises and peonies, when you go to replant them, make sure that you locate that level that they were in when you took them out and plant them at that depth. That way you can continue to get the blooms. If they're too deep, they won't bloom for you. Okay. Lastly, just kind of general maintenance. Pay attention to your gardens. Insects are starting to run rampant right now. Aphids are hot and heavy. Blister beetles are probably a couple weeks out because usually they hit towards July. So be careful. Blister beetles can take out a garden in a day. So be really, really careful. They're little black, gray, kind of bluish gray beetles, and they're not yay big, but they'll eat the foliage. I've seen them devour a mimosa tree. So be really careful with those. So we have a new plant spray. It's called Sayonara, which I think is kind of appropriate. But it is our new bug control. This will take care of 130 different varieties. And the great thing that I've discovered about this, because Ken just brought this in last week, this will actually get rid of spider mites. And our old multi-purpose didn't do such a good job on spider mites. So this does a good job on spider mites. So this is awesome. We have two different types of this. One's in a hose end, ready to use sprayer. So you just hook it up to the hose and go to town. This actually has a measuring cap. So you kind of turn this down and you squeeze it down, and what you want come out, or how much you want comes out here. Or you can just open the cap and pour it into your little mixing cup and put it in your bottle. To me, that would be easier than trying to get it into here. But this makes 64 gallons, so it goes a very, very long way. While I'm talking about mixing, You want to be careful with your sprayers. Everybody should have an arsenal in your garden shed, your garage, or whatever. You should have a sprayer for your weed sprayers, and you should have a sprayer for your insecticides and fungal issues. Because these two can share, the fungal and the bugs can share a sprayer. You never want to put these in a weed sprayer, because if there's any residue in your sprayer, you're going to kill your plants. So just be cautious with that. Always wear gloves. Always tell people to always wear gloves. We try to make or sell the safest products that we can, but be cautious. Be smart about it. This is a hose end sprayer, so if you have larger areas that you want to protect, use a hose end sprayer. Spray bottles work great if you're doing smaller plants and things. Revitalizes or fungicide. This is great for powdery mildews, which we've seen a lot of in the past few days. People have been bringing me roses, some of the phlox. I've seen people bring phlox in. Powdery mildew is out there. And it's because of our higher humidity out there. Fire blight. Fire blight, this will help fire blight as well. So have these handy for you, so you just have to go out and spray. Grasshoppers, we're starting to see them. We've been seeing them for a little while now. Nolobate came in 2 weeks ago. Nolobate is a biologic insecticide, so it's been treated. It's like a bran flake, and you actually set this outside your garden area. You don't want to put it inside because they're attracted to it. So if you put it in the middle of your garden, you're going to have grasshoppers all over. So put it on the outside of your garden bed so they go to it and eat it. This is kind of gross when you start talking about it, but it cannibalizes the grasshoppers. So they start eating each other and all of that stuff. It also messes up their digestive system. So great way to eliminate the spread, the herd of them that we have. So that's kind of just maintenance. For planting, when you go to plant, it's just like anything else that you plant in this area. You want to dig your hole twice as wide and just as deep as you're going, as the plant is in the soil. 2/3 natural soil, 1/3 mulch. They have to get used to living in the soil that we are in. So you don't want that hole too rich. If you keep it too rich, they won't go any further. So you just want to amend to help them get stronger roots to get out there. You want to make your hole kind of bowl shape. So it's deep at the bottom and then come out at the sides. And you want to make sure it's kind of rough on those edges. If it's nice and smooth, like if it was really wet and you took your shovel to it, that becomes concrete. So make sure it's kind of roughed up and there's some holes in there so the roots can kind of figure it out. So 2/3 to 1/3. You can mix the 744 in there as you plant, or you can side dress on top. Either way works just fine. And then water them in very well. And then the last bucket, you want to put some root and grow in there. The root and grow, especially this time of year, this is a fabulous stress reducer. I wish I could drink this myself because there's a lot of stress when this heat is up. But it helps reduce that stress. If you're having a plant that's struggling, just throw some of this on it. It has those micronutrients that help get that root system invigorated again. So we use this every 2 weeks for 6 weeks. On your trees and shrubs, that's a must. Some of your smaller perennials and such, maybe 2 or 3 times as well, especially this time of year. veggies, you know, if you're planting your garden, tomatoes, any of that stuff, this stuff is great for. We've also found, because we've started using it on houseplants, this is a fabulous houseplant food. So it's kind of an all-around great product. So this is what I use for my houseplant cactus. This is fabulous for cactus. Okay. So I think I have talked about everything that I needed to. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
If you discover you've overwatered a plant and it's starting to look like it's dying, is there any hope of saving it?
Possibly. It kind of depends on how far south it has gone. But what I usually do in that situation, and I will be the first one to admit I am guilty of it as well. You know, you run out, you don't even put your finger in it. I need the water, oh, I forgot, or something. And so, but I'll take a stick, and if it's in a pot or even in the ground, I'll just pop some holes kind of outside the planting hole, just so it can dry out a little bit. That'll help get some air in there. So yeah, that's, and just let it dry out. Like I said, I can stand up here and tell you you're going to water this many times, but get out there and feel. I have a piece of rebar in each of my garden areas just so I can stick my finger in the ground. And some plants take up a lot of water and some don't. So, you know, it can get to be a pain because you have to check every plant. But once they get established, you won't have to deal with it so much, and they'll get more consistent as far as how much water you're going to need.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you're transplanting your plants from containers, get it to nursery, put it in the ground, I've heard that you actually are supposed to loosen up the root system before you put it in a new hole. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So her question is that do you need to kind of scrunch the roots out, tease the roots? Thank you. And yeah, you definitely do. Some pots in a nursery can get root mount. So if you see that, you definitely want, and it won't hurt them, especially if you get something that's really, really root bound. Every once in a while, I have some contract grows that come in, and they're actually growing through the container on the bottom, and I have like this much root, and it's like, oh my gosh, this has been sitting there too long. But don't feel bad about tearing some of that off. If you just kind of pop it in the ground, your plant's probably going to die in less than a month, just because it's so bound tight that they can't go out. So I'll scrunch it, especially if you've got a heavy set of white roots on the bottom. I kind of pull that apart. If they're not, like the one that I just pulled out, what is it called? Oh, there he is. Like this. This one, I would pull all of that stuff off just to get him out of the pot. But this is a great example of it. So I would actually just rip this up, just like this. And with a tree or a shrub, I actually put a couple of slices just right through here, just to open it up. And basically what that'll do is get the roots to go out. Because they're not following the leader and going around the pot. Those will just go out to the edge. You can do that with anything that you plant. You want to do that. Yeah.
The humic down there, is that good for gardens?
Absolutely.
The vegetable?
Yeah. Her question was, is the humic, is it good for gardens? Like I said, I apply it every March. And usually most of us get our vegetable gardens started in March. If you haven't, definitely get it done now, because you will notice a difference. It really does great things. Yes?
A couple of questions online. First of all, someone asked if you could just sort of recap the pink, geez, I think it's catchy.
Yeah.
The plants that are particularly good for attracting hummingbirds.
Okay.
Just
So Do I need to repeat that or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question online was, what plants are particularly attractive to hummingbirds? And so what you're looking for in a hummingbird garden is anything tubular. So like the Daylily, it has this tubular flower. Autumn sage has this gorgeous tubular flower. And the brighter colors, the oranges and the reds are the most attractive. Purples are also great. That annual salvia over there, or the ignition purple, they love those two. So the darker the color, the better the hummingbirds like them. But I do have a white one of these, and they don't seem to mind that one either. So, but they do tend to go towards the darker colors.
Another question from Tracy. She is trying to find out how to plant an Easter lily. She's gone online, and everything is so confusing. She'd like you to tell her how to plant an Easter lily.
Okay, so Tracy online wants to know how to plant an Easter lily. So basically you're going to plant it just like any other perennial that we just talked about. So you're going to dig your hole twice as wide, just as deep. I would put a little bit of superphosphate on the bottom of the hole, 2/3 to 1/3, just like everything else that you plant in this area. I would top it off with the 744. And the 744 is just kind of like a meat and potatoes fertilizer. If you want, Easter lilies are one of those that I believe only bloom once a year. So you will have to wait until next year for it to rebloom. And it will die to the ground, and then it'll come back in the springtime for you. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I should have taken a picture, and I forgot this morning. We have sort of a white scab on a leaf of it's like a little mini tree or a bush. I'm not really sure what it is. We're new to the area. We just bought the house, and it's a white scab. It's about yay high, maybe the size of a penny, and a leaf that's a little larger.
Okay. She has a white scab, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, but what I would say is bring a picture in, or bring the leaf in,
Yeah.
and we'd be happy to take a look at it. A lot of times there is a scale that gets on trees and shrubs, but they're usually on the branches. Sometimes galls can take over a leaf, and basically there's a little bug in there. If it is a gall, usually they don't hurt the plant. It's just kind of a home for the parasite that's in there. So bring it in, and we'll take a look at it for you. Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, I guess that's a wrap. I appreciate you guys coming, and I appreciate all the interesting questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's kind of a mess, and I need to deal with it.